Welcome to yet another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 482. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me per usual, Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from 4 Boxing News, Indy, and Scarborough. What's going on, lady and gent?
Man, everybody is. It's kind of like when you eat too much at a family dinner. That's how much boxing we all watched the last few days. And we're still trying to digest it all.
Indeed, a lot was happening around the same time, Friday, Saturday, and even on Easter Sunday, as we will talk about shortly when it comes to Caroline Dubois and Terri Harper. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report live YouTube show, podcast, and podcast discussing all things boxing. No matter when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. If you want to follow us, if you check the description below, you can find where to catch Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over the social media sphere. Um, link where to find the YouTube channel, link where to find the Twitter, IG page. If you wish to email us, you can do so. You can do so P4PBoxing at P4PBoxingReport.com. If you wish to contribute, I know folks are filing their taxes and maybe getting their tax returns in around this time. If you want to throw a little coin our way, dollar, $2, $5, it would not matter. Got Cash Me and PayPal donation links within the description here. And let's get things going. As Gail noted, a lot of fights happening this weekend. Let's start because there's so many fights. Let's start what happened yesterday afternoon, our time, right? Go to you, Gail. Women's unification on the line at 135 pounds between Caroline Dubois and Terri Harper. A lot of trash talk that took place before this fight, right? Dubois said she was going to dominate. I wouldn't, and she ended up winning. I wouldn't put it so much as dominate, but she was in control after getting off to a slow start, right? Unified champion at 135 pounds. Talk about her performance in the lead up. There was two things going on. There was the back and forth between Dubois and Harper, and there was the back and forth between Dubois and unified 130-pound champion Alicia Bumgarner. It's continued even in the aftermath of this fight. Some of you may have seen Bumgarner post a video basically saying that she's not going to fight her, at least not anytime soon. Yada yada yada. She got other fights too that she wants to entertain. We'll go into that a bit, but I thought that Dubois was a little bit tight in the early rounds, Gail. She kind of loosened up when she scored that knockdown. And Harper, once she got hurt, once she started to bleed a bit, I was a little bit disappointed in the fact that she didn't throw up much resistance. But in the end, Dubois did what she had to do. She's the face of the women's lightweight division right now.
She is now. I mean, she's got stardom written all over her. The fact that she has got a famous former world champion brother in Daniel Dubois. Their personalities are very similar, actually. Caroline, although she engaged with the trash talk with Terri Harper initiated most of it. And right before the fight, she just turned much more stoic, very stone faced. I mean, really like her brother. And I think the little of that carried into the ring. She was very cautious initially with Harper. I mean, a loss to her would have been a disaster, but it didn't happen. She turned the fight in her favor when she scored a knockdown in the sixth round. It was a breakthrough round, and it seemed to, sort of loosen her up in all the right ways. She went to the body first to Harper, both sides, and then landed both sides of the head, right hook, left hook, bang. Harper was down. And they were fighting 2-minute rounds in this fight. And when she knocked Harper down, Dubois kind of did a little celebratory dance before she went to the neutral corner, and she kind of forgot. And the referee had to say to her, "Hey, girl, get to the neutral corner." Well, the knockdown happened very near the end of that 2-minute round. And first of all, they'd been fighting 3-minute rounds. Dubois would have finished Harper off then and there. But if she hadn't wasted time with the delay getting to the neutral corner, she still might have had enough time. There wasn't a lot of time left. She probably would have had 15, 20 seconds. As it turned out, she probably had 5. So she couldn't finish the job, but that was all right because she went on in the following 4 rounds to completely shut the door over what had been kind of an even fight. So the scores were 98-92 twice and 97-93. Very fair, really fairly scored. And Dubois said, I felt like I had to go through the gears, no excuses. And she said that she found Harper a bit tricky until she hit the target with that knockdown in the 6th round. So, she got through it. She did what she needed to do. It wasn't a flashy fight, and there had been more entertaining fights earlier on the card. So in comparison, she did what was necessary, and that's okay. So she'll get more fights. Yes, her stablemates all over her, Alicia Baumgardner. Alicia's got her own fight coming up here. And the next card, which comes back to the United States. We'll see what Alicia looks like in that fight. And I'm sure they'll continue to carry on until the matchmakers at MVP decide it's time for a showdown. But Dubois and Baumgardner are 2 of their big stars, so they aren't going to match them up and risk one of them taking a tough loss immediately. We have to remind ourselves Dubois is still fairly young, especially, for the women's game I want to say she's 25. So they're going to proceed probably a bit on the cautious side with her. But she is a big draw in Great Britain. They want to maintain that.
And the other side of that, Daniel, is Baumgardner doesn't want the fight right now. She mentioned how she just went extensive video talking about Dubois and saying that she has other fights lined up. My thing is this. Okay, I get it. Uh, why don't you just say it what everybody knows, and that is you, an MVP, are trying to position her for a fight with Serrano later on this year. Um, and I will have more respect because it's more money in a fight right now with Serrano than it is with Serrano at 130 than it is with Dubois at 135 pounds. Don't sit there and go, "Oh, she's a C-level fighter. She's this and she's that, and she needs to become undisputed." Yada yada yada. No, she don't. Um, just put it out there and let people know the real what's really going on with you and why you don't want the fight right now. Personally, I would have more respect if she did so.
First, Alicia Baumgardner needs to still dig herself out of that hole that she put herself in with those failed PD tests. Because that's going to
never really answered for it. She never really answered for it.
And pretty much, and Dubois let it be known in the post-fight press conferences that is still front and center when it comes to highlighting Alicia Baumgardner. And we're at a point in boxing where I agree, Mike. It's easy to say, like, yeah, I have another fight, a big payday coming up that I could get more money for. Worth to fighting you. That's not something that you can scoff at. And that's even with Dubois being, but the Dubois family in general being a decent draw in the UK. The main probably obstacle is always going to be the fact that Where's the fight going to be? Because Bumgarner's probably never going to feel me and understand me. So when we discuss other fights, never going to feel like she's ever going to have a fair shake if she fights in the UK. And the only way she's going to get a fight out of the UK right now is to get a marquee fight with somebody like Sedano. Because at that point, even though you can do that, Dubois holds a lot of the cards in that area. She's more of a draw in that aspect than Bumgarner is.
Because outside of Serrano, where is Bumgarner going to make serious money, even fighting in the US?
Like the only fight that I could see is once again Michaela Mayer, and that could be made now with Michaela Mayer being MVP, but that's still not as big as Serrano. It's just not. And that's throwing no shade to Michaela Mayer.
Well, and the fact is, Mayer already has a fight teed up because after Chantelle Cameron won her fight, they already have an agreement for a fight, assuming that Cameron won her fight, which she did. They faced off in the ring. So Michaela's staying at 154 for now.
Indeed. Let's move on because we got a lot of fights to cover from the past Easter weekend, right?
And if
we
you
don't
want
talk
to,
enough.
if you want to read more about the women's event, read my article on NY Fights. You got a full recap. So
Indeed.
on to the next card.
Speaking of the ladies, because I want to stick there, right? And I'll go to you on this one. You can chime in as well, Gail. Ellie Scotney, 122-pound champion. We don't talk about her enough. Haven't talked about her enough here on Pound for Pound Boxing Report. And I don't think she gets enough pub in general, even within women's boxing circles, right? Fought Mayelli Flores, beat her by decision, UD, to become undisputed at 122 pounds, right? In the discussion about who's the top, who's the elite when it comes to women's boxing, we often talk about Katie Taylor and Clarissa Shields, even a Bumgarner or a Mayer or Sabat or Gabriela Fondora, excuse me, right? I think given who Ellie Scotney is, undisputed at 122, she's beaten the 118-pound champion who gets a lot of attention, a lot of praise, Shaneka Johnson, and beat her rather easily, right? Uh, by unanimous decision. Daniel, I'll say it again. I think that it's time that we and just the boxing space in general give Scotney her praise because she is smack dab in the middle of her prime. And she's a damn good fighter.
She is a damn good fighter, but oh man, the scorecards, they pissed me off so much. I was fine with 96-94. I was perfectly fine with 96-94 because Scotney was being very good defensively, and the Flores was still coming forward, landing decent uppercuts while she was on the inside, landing decent body shots, but never enough to hurt Scotney. And vice versa in many ways. Scotney gave good punches when it came to the distance, but nothing enough where you could deter Flores. Those 100-90 cards, I know we talk about when Vegas sends those cards out before they even watch the fight. That was ludicrous. I'm like, that fight was a lot closer than those cards into it. And that's, like I said, that's not taking anything away from Scotney. She did a great job. Like her, this is one of those fights that both her and Flores elevated their stock together in this fight, because both of them put on great performances. The scorecard just, it legitimately pissed me off. I'm not mad that Scotney won. It was that close enough of a fight where you can argue which whether or not her or Flores won. I would say more. I would lean more towards Scotney because she did land the cleaner punches towards the end. But those are 190 cards. No. Those need to go.
It's interesting you say that. It was a very close fight. It was very back and forth. It was a terrific matchup. For those who don't know Mayelli Flores well, she's the female Pitbull Cruz, okay? She fights like him, she looks like him, she's a little fire hydrant at 4'11" and non-stop action. So you have a good picture of kind of how the fight went. But you know what? Frequently you have cards like this, and you may not have seen the fight and think, oh, 100-80, damn, she blew her out. But that's not always what happens. You score a fight round by round, and all that is necessary for a fighter to win one round is to be the fighter who was 51% better than, it's a 51-49, right? You got to be the person getting it over the middle line. And if you just edge the round, in the judge's opinion, you win. Well, if Scotney won every round just barely over Flores, you end up with 180, 100-80 scorecard. I mean, and it looks on paper very different than it actually went down. And the difference maker is that, Flores is just a whirling dervish. She's nonstop. And sometimes it is very difficult to see when there are that many punches, what's landing, what's not. Scotney was more economical, more accurate, and cleaner, and those punches are easier for the judges to see. So when the rounds are close, the rounds go to Scotney. So that's, in my opinion, exactly what those judges saw with that 100-80 scorecards. And even Scotney said after the fight, her quote was, "I can't tell you how much of a hard fight that was, and the scores can't give Flores justice." Good for her. She said that she was a real champion, and that was my hardest test, and I knew it was going to be. So now that she's won, Jake Paul has to fulfill the promise he made to her before the fight, which was that if she won and successfully became the youngest undisputed champion, male or female, in British history at age 28, that he would buy her a car of her choice. Well, her car of choice is a 2026 Mercedes G-Wagon, which will set Jake back list price $230,000. And fortunately, it is a big enough vehicle to carry all of Scotney's belts. So good work. She still, however, has to get a driver's license because at age 28, she still doesn't have one.
He made that promise. He needs to live up to it, and
Yeah.
that's all I'm gonna say.
He said he would.
Before I get myself in trouble.
Yeah.
He would, yeah.
No, and I think he will. Good for him. And she said after the fight, "Hey, Jake, where's that G-Wagon?" So she's not going to let him leave the UK until he puts a few bucks down and orders that car for her.
Also on this card, you mentioned Chantelle Cameron, who got the decision win against Michaela Kotaskova, fairly comfortable margin, and she looked good after the fight, as you noted, Gail. The announcement, informal, really, that she's going to fight Michaela Mayer. One, are you a little bit surprised that Cameron, who I think her best weight is still 140 pounds, looks rather well at 154, That's A. B. She's fighting at junior middleweight, and in the face-off against Michaela Mayer, I'm looking at the two ladies, and Mayer looks a whole division bigger than Cameron.
Yeah,
I was stunned.
Cameron only weighed in for that fight at 148.
Right.
She didn't even come close to the limit. So that's a big hill to climb. But you know what? That's a big money fight. There's a US UK rivalry. Michaela has fought in the UK 4 times. She is a big ticket seller there, so I would not be surprised if that's where the fight takes place. But we'll see what happens. Um, and maybe Cameron just, at this point, she's fought everyone. She's, kind of a senior stateswoman already with 23 fights under her belt. And it's not a bad fight. It's a great fight for Mayer. She kind of made was heading down the road, hearing all the talk from Clarissa wanting a fight and her saying, you got to come down to 160. And she made that right turn, and there was Chantelle Cameron. And, there was a reason the MVP just signed her. Although I think they would have signed her anyway. I don't mind it. I like it. I like the fact that big fights are already in the pipeline being planned. They had this card. They've got 2 more scheduled. They're starting to, tee them up in their series about once a month. And, maybe this is their MVPW 4 or 5 card in the future, with this as the main event. But they are part of the ESPN women's sports programming package that will take place on Sundays through the rest of the summer, which is a great partnership for everybody involved. This first fight card, because it was early, wasn't on the main network, and they're still getting through NCAA and other stuff going on. So it was only on ESPN Plus. But from here on out, all of these cards will be on ESPN on Sundays. Competing with SUFA. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm. England, the UK, that was the epicenter of the sport this weekend. And over in London, you had Deontay Wilder, Derek Chisora. I was dismissive of this bout when it was announced, right? 2 fighters who were over the hill. I still think that afterwards, the fight was sloppy, but for what is worth, it was rather entertaining, though it got dangerous at a certain point for me because um, that fight could have, and a strong argument made, should have been stopped in round 8 when Wilder badly hurt Chisora. I'm giving serious side eye to the referee, who I thought did a horrible job all evening long or afternoon long, our time, right? Wilder got the win. Okay, he's basically looked at eyeball Anthony Joshua a little bit heading outside the ring, basically saying, let's do it, claiming that Joshua was scared. I don't think that. But I look at all of that to say, he got the win. He's talking about Joshua. I didn't necessarily want to see him fight Chisora at this point. I don't even know if I want to see him fight Joshua. Time has passed that bout. What does it mean now in 2026?
It doesn't mean much at all, unfortunately, at this stage. Because we're starting to see new heavyweights starting to come into the picture. This card had a couple of them, but first of all, I know people were complaining about the quality of the fight. Did y'all actually expect a Hagler Hearns, Vasquez Marquez type of fight out of this version of Deontay Wilder and this version of Derek Chisora? No. Flat out no. But it's a sad aspect of the fact that Chisora got put into this position where he has essentially now just become a gatekeeper. He's been a gatekeeper for a while, but to this point. And unfortunately, Waters had a point in his career, if he does continue, where he himself is starting going to become part of a gatekeeper. Because there's a good little battalion of British heavyweights starting to come in, and maybe some American heavyweights starting to come in too. Not to mention any potential Eastern European, Ukrainian, Russian fighters that are going to come out fairly soon. It's just the division passed them by. And when you think of this fight, when you think of Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder, at this stage, that you would still give the edge to AJ because he's still in better shape. He's been a little bit more active, and he's gained a lot of good capital by ethering Jake Paul the way he did. And when it comes to Wilder, that's unfortunately, we know the best days are behind him. And unless he can land one good right hand, and it's always been the case, let's be honest, folks, it's been the case like this. If Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua would have fought in their prime, skill-wise, you would have given the edge to Joshua, but you've always would have given Wilder that one chance that if he landed a right hand clean, that he could win the fight. Because AJ has proven time and time again that he can be hurt. Sorry, and that's still the case now. But even with all that, it's still a fight that, to me, it's not really worth it. It's not worth it for American audiences because it's not going to gain anything when it comes to Wilder, and it's not going to make anything when it comes to UK audiences because that's not the guy who UK people still want to see Joshua fight. We know who's they want to fight. We're probably going to talk about him a little bit.
I mean, just to your earlier point, in contrast, when you compare it to the young up and coming heavyweights now, particularly Atuma and what he's doing, I'm just more excited about his development and his potential than I am in Wilder. Yes, he was able to hurt Chisora, but from a technique standpoint, it is what it is with Wilder. He fights with little to no technique. He's regressed since that first Bermain Stavern fight, and Chisora, he's just completely washed. I just hope he lives up to his word and does not fight anymore. He just doesn't. He just doesn't. He's in danger of seriously hurting himself. Right. Back to the ladies here. Lauren Price with Michaela Mayer all but likely have left 147 for good. Price by default is the lady to beat at 147, unified champion there, right? Got the win over a fighter by the name of Aquino. Got busted up a little bit, right? Significant swelling over the eyes, but an interesting observer was ringside. That's the one Clarissa Shields had a little bit of a orchestrated stare down afterwards. Shields has a fight coming up later this year, presumably against Shadeja Green. Shadeja Green was her upcoming fight. Uh, but if she's able to pass that, get by that, uh, according to both Price and Shields, they could face each other potentially later on this year in a catchweight fight, Gail.
Yeah, I mean, Clarissa is struggling to find decent dance partners. That's why she and Mayer had been talking, even though finding an appropriate weight division that they could both make realistically was, really a stretch. So anything that gets her closer, yeah. I mean, obviously, we all, well, I'll speak for myself. I want to see that Shields Shadeja Green showdown for sure. Shadeja is really the kind of the one target left in front of her. But Lauren Price, not bad. She acquitted herself well. Yeah, they did have a rough fight. But she showed that she could, bite down on the gum shield when she's getting beat up, and get the job done. And she's a very determined fighter, so I don't mind that at all. Green is going to fight, and I can't recall her opponent's name, shame on me, but she is the kind of the co-main event, dual mains along with Baumgartner, kind of like they did on Sunday in the next MVPW fight in New York. So assuming that Shadeja defends her title, then they can all start having that conversation. But down the road, we all know where this is headed. As long as Green keeps winning, she has lost, so it's not a given, but it's a saying in boxing that has just turned out to be so true over the years, that when you are a champion, that belt makes you fight 10-15% better. And that's really been true of Shadeja.
Yeah, Shadeja's fighting Lonnie Daniels.
There we go.
On
That's
the
right.
on the 17th, in the little theater, the little MSG, I believe, in
Yeah,
New
they're at the
York.
theater. I think that's now they keep changing names of that damn thing, who the sponsor is. But yeah, and they should fill it, and that should be a very fun card. If you are in the New York area, you might want to check it out.
Indeed. Let's go to the little guys. In your general area, Temecula, California, you were in attendance for this card, Manny Pacquiao promoted card. The main events was Pedro Taduran, who has a belt down at 108 pounds, right? Uh, U.S. debut against a fighter by the name of Alvarez. And it's clear now that the goal was to put Taduran in essentially a showcase bout to make him look good in hopes of a potential fight with unified champion Oscar Collazo. When met with that opportunity, Taduran, during the pre-fight interview, said he was going to stop him in 7, and he did that, and he looked fairly good in that fight, Gail. So at the very least, he's making a case that he wants Collazo in the ring, and Collazo was paying attention, at least based on his comments on social media afterwards. So it looks like, from what I'm hearing, the two camps have already in discussions, and we could get a unification bout at 105 pounds later on this year between Taduran and Collazo. I'm here for it.
It is about damn time. Poor Oscar Collazo, man. He has been chasing his foes forever. He has the WBO belt and the WBA belt. Taduran's the IBF world champion, ably defended it. And then your WBC champion is Melvin Jerusalem. So he has said to both Taduran and Jerusalem, I don't care which one of you I fight first. It's just, come on, guys. But Taduran, he is signed to Manny Pacquiao Promotions, a fairly new promotional operation, right? And, I don't think Pacquiao and the matchmakers want to give up one of their few Filipino stars and champions quite that fast. So they teed up this fight with Gustavo Alvarez, who's from Ensenada, which is just south of the border, right? And Temecula is about an hour north of the border, maybe a little more. So, they knew that it'd be drawing some Mexican fans, some regional Southern California fans. But Alvarez was just, he did what he could, and he came out of the gate strong. So
He tried to box, but
he did what he
you could
could,
just
but
tell that
Taduran
Taduran was just he
wear
was just
himself.
a train just building momentum, and once he put on the power in round 4, I believe it was, you knew it was going to be a wrap.
Well, Taduran kind of let him wear himself out the first few rounds and then got down to work, and he scored his first 2 of 4 knockdowns in round 4. They were both on body shots. very impressive. He got up,
Yes.
he survived. He spent the fifth round on his bicycle, staying out of Taduran's range, but he couldn't escape forever. And at the end of the sixth round, Taduran picked up the third knockdown with a left hook, and he sent Perez flying backward onto his backside, which it's always impressive when you see that. Now, fortunately or unfortunately for Alvarez, he it happened at the end of the round, so he made it to the seventh round where you knew carnage and destruction was going to ensue, and the decision was, are we going to save Alvarez from himself? And fortunately for him, the referee was Thomas Taylor. When Taduran drilled Perez one more time, and Perez, I'm sorry, Perez Alvarez is the dual name, so he was really going by Perez actually. Um, he made his feet one more damn time, and Taylor took one look at him and said, "The son, your night's over." So he did make Taduran's prediction of a seventh round stoppage accurate, because it was at 134 of the seventh round. And it was a fun fight to watch. It was very action packed. Perez was not going to just lay down. He came to fight, and now it does tee up the potential for a unification fight um, for Oscar Collazo. And he is on a very firm quest because he has the opportunity to become, believe it or not, Puerto Rico's first male undisputed world champion. You have one in Amanda Serrano, but not any of the great male Puerto Rican champions have earned all four belts. They were either before the era or just never had all four at one time. And Collazo's watching, these two guys, because he knows there's going to be two more belts to pick up. In my opinion, I would have liked to see Taduran and Jerusalem fight each other, right? With one Filipino unified champion going up against Collazo for all the glory. So we'll see what happens. What would also be so much fun is that Collazo's co-promoted by Oscar De La Hoya and Miguel Cotto. And if Taduran ended up being the next fighter, that means De La Hoya and Cotto would join up with Manny Pacquiao as the three promoters of the fight. And what an interesting reunion that would be. Just for boxing historians and fans, just to see those three collaborating on a card that features Collazo and Taduran. I've got to say, I do love that.
That's part of the reason why I actually want to see the fight. Just want to see those three.
Yeah, we were figuring all that out, and
those three gathered into it, especially right now. This version of Oscar, like if this version of Oscar that does the Clapback Thursdays.
Oh gosh, the one who does the trolling folks trolling promoters and managers and networks every Thursday.
I think he has. I don't think he'll go hard on Manny. I mean, he might tease him, but Manny is a pretty cool character. He doesn't really rise to the bait anyway, so I think they would all get along just fine. And Cotto, same way. He's very low key. We see him show up when his fighters are on Golden Boy cards, which happens a lot. They're all in the same business now together, and it's in their best interests to work together against the bigger guys. So they've got this talent in the smaller weight divisions. They all respect that, and it's nothing but good for the sport.
Absolutely. I'll take this next card because I don't know if many people saw it, if any, in truth. And that is Rene Santiago, who's unified champion at 108 pounds, right? Defended those belts in Japan. Gets the fighter by the name of Taniguchi, 17, 10, 16, 11, 14, 13. I think the two 17-10 and the 16-11 cards were a little bit wide. Um, the Japanese opponent got off to a good start, right? But went down. But the champion was able to put him down at the midway mark of the fight, and then begin to seize control Taniguchi fought hard into the final bell, but Santiago uh, did a really good job of using his footwork and timely counterpunching to pull it out in the end. Where he goes from here, um, he's had a heck. He's been having a really good run in Japan. This is like his fourth straight bout, I believe, in Japan. Look for his next bout to be in Japan as well. It's going to probably fight um, a guy by the name of Kira, who is his number one contender. Interestingly enough, Kira Daiya, began his career at 115, has been steadily moving down to 108 pounds. Pretty highly touted in Japan. I've seen footage of him, of some of his fights on YouTube. Um, he's a guy with real talent, and I think because he's naturally bigger, from a physical standpoint, could pose some problems from Santiago. The problem is for me is that Kira, he's only 22, and Santiago fights with a lot of guile. Um, he has the kind of style that can frustrate guys, and that could he could do that for Kira. But in terms of the future for Rene Santiago, look for him to continue in Japan, just like Anthony Olaskawaga has basically recently made a career of fighting in Japan. You've seen the same thing of Rene um, um, Santiago. Last bout I want to talk about here. Didn't mention it here in the description, but we saw, ladies and gentlemen, the return of Tim Tszyu, who fought this weekend. Set up bout, got to win. Up next is going to be Errol Spence, Gail, Daniel, whoever wants to pick this up. Talk about how Tim Tszyu looked. He was cutting this bout, and I don't. The talk is that Zoo and Spence could fight sometime in June. Given the severity of the cut, Gail Daniel, I don't know if we'll see that bout in June.
I don't think you're going to see that bout in June, but I do think you're going to see that bout because seriously, where else is Tim Tszyu going to go? Where else is Errol Spence going to go? He apparently has an appetite for coming back. If they do fight this summer, it will be a full 3 years since he was in the ring when he was absolutely taken to school by Terrence Crawford in a result I don't think a lot of people predicted, at least not to that level. And honestly, I don't hate this fight at all. What's really important is the matchmaking and the expectations of the fans. Now, I know there were a lot of haters over Chisora and Wilder. I get it. But they were very evenly matched from an age and skill perspective. Everybody should have known what they were going to see. And for what it was and for where they were at, it was wildly entertaining. Haters, you all missed out. I'm just going to leave it there. There's a little tiny bit of that here with Tszyu and Spence. You know, expectations need to be tempered for this matchup, but there's the intrigue of what does Spence look like now? What has he got? And Tim Tszyu is no longer the guy who burst on the scene from Australia with his very famous father's name and a whole lot of offensive fire to make his fights interesting. You know, we were talking a little bit before the show. When he got knocked out by Bakram Murtazaliev, he has never been the same. He has decided to try and adjust his fighting style. He's just had his second fight with trainer Pedro Diaz out of Miami, who's a very cerebral sort of trainer, and trying to get him to be more defensively responsible, right? Not just rush in like he normally likes to do. But, you know, at this point, I don't think that Diaz is going to be able to change Tim Tszyu all that much because when things get heated up or he gets punched or he lands a punch, he completely throws out the new blueprint and goes back to what he's always done. And that's how he got cut. He took a cut from a headbutt, accidental, rushing in under the left eye, right under the ridge of the cheekbone. So while it was a deep cut and bled, you know, he was very fortunate to have Russ Amber, the noted cut man, there at the ready to take care of it, which he did. They kept it under control, and it was in a place where it wasn't hurting anything. It wasn't obscuring his vision. It was an area that, his opponent was really not able to hit that target. So he got through it, and he joked after the fight, well, hey, I got cut, but at least I won this time. So, good for him. I mean, you have to admire his laughing about it. But, yeah, I'm wondering how many stitches that's going to need and how much it's going to heal up. Tim Tszyu is just one of those guys that gets cut. It's kind of funny. He reminded me a little bit about Chris Algieri. Chris Algieri got cut all the time in every fight, it seemed like. I mean, it just, unless it was in a bad spot, it never stopped him, and Tzew's kind of the same. But he won. He won fairly handily on a couple of those cards. Again, I think it was very much, in some cases, those 51 to 49 rounds, the close ones, they went to Tszyu. I don't feel any of his old fire coming out. And I mean more of the psychological fire, that burning, I'm going to beat the shit out of you attitude that he used to have. He kind of shrugs his shoulders a lot after fights. He didn't show any major enthusiasm after his win. I just did not, judging a fighter by vibes is not exactly scientific or, intellectually thoughtful. But I gotta say, I did not feel any good energy vibes or any enthusiasm out of Tim Tszyu. It's
The
still
guy who
low.
was talking
It's
shit or
Yep,
trying to call out
exactly.
Charlo, it ain't there
right.
no more. It ain't.
Yeah, it hasn't been there since that knockout.
Yeah. Okay. So we're all seeing the same thing. We've all seen a lot of fighters and their demeanor, and it does matter. But Spence and the mystery around Errol Spence and what we're going to get, and the tempered expectations about a guy coming back at this level after 3 years out of the ring, that's a mystery that's just too damned intriguing for us not to get behind. And if that fight takes place in Australia, they get, big turnout, big crowd, decent money. But it could take place here because I do think Errol Spence and everyone's curiosity would make it a big draw and a good matchup. And there are question marks about both of them. So, while everybody might be scratching their head over this, again, let me go back to matchmaking and fan expectations. Nobody expected a brilliant technical fight from Wilder or Chisora. Nobody even expected Usyk versus Fury, right? I expected exactly what I saw, with the exception of questions about whether Wilder could pull the trigger. Well, it wasn't the Wilder that that flattened Bermain Stavern and many others along the way, but it was the best Wilder we've seen since his last loss to Tyson Fury, by far. And it goes back to, do people want to see Wilder and Joshua? You know what? I do. I absolutely do. Yeah, it's past its sell date, but it's not gone yet. And Joshua was sitting there next to Eddie Hearn in the front row, standing up, wildly cheering for these guys. He was loving it. During the fight, he did a ringside interview and he said, hey, there's no technique involved here, but these guys are going for it. And he was laughing. So he's completely up for it.
Yeah, he should be.
Yeah.
He should be.
Well, what's interesting now is a lot of how all that goes down to diverge back off into the heavyweight division is what's going to happen this weekend with Tyson Fury versus Akhmedov fight, right? Whether Fury wins and wins in impressive fashion will determine how all the heavyweight chess pieces get moved around the board, right? If he looks really good and not sort of world beater good, then we're going to get Fury and Joshua. And I do think that's the preferred matchup. So if that happens, believe it or not, I have heard word on these streets that Wilder, should stay busy. And there are suggestions he should fight Francis Ngannou.
Oh, no.
I think that's a terrible idea, but it does make me laugh. When I have heard this come up, I thought, get out of here. What?
Oh, no.
I think that is an absolutely horrible idea because Francis
I have no words for that.
Like it is a terrible idea on all fronts. It's not just a terrible idea for Wilder. It's a terrible idea for Ngannou at the same time.
They both threaten each other. I mean, obviously we've seen that Francis Ngannou does not have an impenetrable chin. And, I will give it to him. Wilder took some heavy-duty shots from Chisora and walked through almost all of them. And, I've never thought of Wilder having a great chin, but he had a pretty good chin this weekend. So, again, there's a lot of haters out there. I get it. These are all the old men, right, of the division. I don't mind seeing them. I don't mind them having some last fights before they retire. Chisora is definitely retired. I hope he does indeed take up his friend Deontay's invitation to come down and stay with him and his family and go fishing in Alabama, which apparently is absolutely a real thing. So I hope we see loads of fun social media if and when they do. Chisora went out on his shield. His fans love him for it. They've always loved him for it. He's got double-digit losses, and they do not give a shit.
Now, this fight with Tim Tszyu, this is about it's the typical you want to have a good comeback fight. You don't want to give it against somebody that's an actual world beater. This should have been the fight where that old Tim Tszyu should have come back. The one that really had the dog, the one that was pretty much dog walking at one point both Charlos, Mel and Maul. But it's not there. It's not there. I don't know if it's because that knockout took it out of him. I don't know if it's because with the temperament that maybe Pedro Diaz is rubbing off on him. Pedro Diaz is a very, very even keel trainer. Maybe that may be rubbing off on him a little bit, but not fully the style. But this is the interesting part when it comes to the Spence fight. I have to see how mentally, where Errol Spence is mentally, because the beating that Terrence Crawford put on him, looking back at it, looking back at the lead up of the fight, at some points it did get to cruel and unusual punishment. But that's the fight that you normally get with Crawford. You piss him off, he's going to ensure you receive cruel and unusual punishment. The interesting part when it comes to this, it's not only the layoff in that area, is can these guys go at 154 at this stage? So, like I said, Tszyu was not going to move up to middleweight. Looks to me not be the case. And that's just one division up from what Spencer's fighting at. And if any of these guys look good, if they look really good in the upcoming fight, you know the fight the fans are going to throw up just by name value. They're going to want to fight with Sebastian Fundora. And we've seen what Tim Tszyu can do against somebody like Fundora. He can either win the fight greatly and then get cut, or then he can get mollywopped. And with Spence, it'll be probably even worse because Sebastian Fundora is developing a bit of a mean streak. I think he's finally figured out that Mendoza knockout was just basically Mendoza landing the right punch at the right time, and that he has all the attributes to just be a killer at 154. And not to mention, we did talk about this before the show. Him and his sister
But he
Gabby
treated
Fundora.
Thurman like a little kid, literally.
Yeah, exactly. And then we talked about this before the show too. Him and his sister Gabby Fundora have this little bit of a sibling rivalry going on, where you can look at the fights before them. You can see that Gabby has the more, I would say, more bloodlust when it comes to beating her opponents. But Sebastian is getting there. He is getting there. So it's going to be interesting to see how they shape up in the fight. And yeah, I think Gail did jump into like the preview with the Tyson Fury fight. Tyson, just don't look terrible. Like, look better than what you did against Ngannou, because it was an embarrassment of how that fight ended up with Ngannou. But hopefully he gets to the case. I don't think it's going to be at a point where you can see that he should challenge Usyk again, because Usyk has a way of making his opponents legitimately insane. Should we go back to when when Joshua cut a Jim Cornette promo after losing the second time? And Tyson Fury is just still the same thing. Like, if you're trying to position the fight with Usyk, that's a fight futility. At this point, just get the UK money, look good enough to get the fight with AJ, and that'll be good. Then you can retire to the upset, because after that, the only other fight would have been another one with Wilder, but we've seen that too many times already.
Yeah, nobody need to see that. We do not need to see Fury Wilder 4.
No, we do not. Let's move on to some news here. Last episode, we talked about Top Rank making a deal with DAZN. Well, it was announced a little bit before we hit the live button that some fighters from the Top Rank stable getting ready to fight within the next few months. Keyshawn Davis fighting the rematch with Mahir Albright May 16th, and followed by a couple of fights that's going to happen in May 30th. I'm interested in this fight. I like this fight between Ashanti Foster and Raymond Ford. They've been talking back and forth on Twitter, trash talking back and forth on Twitter. And the fight is May 30th again. And on July the 4th, Independence Day, put that in quotes, Abdullah Mason fighting Joe Cordina. I like this fight for young Abdullah, who's I think he's either 21 or just turned 22 years old, fighting a Cordina who was a champion at 130 pounds, moving up to 135. I think Gail, right opponent, right time for Mason. But the interesting, most from a competitive standpoint, I think the fight between Foster and Ford. I would give Foster the advantage, but the real backstory here in terms of intrigue is Davis and Albright, given the chaos literally that ensued during their first fight.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can imagine why Top Ranks matchmakers and promotional division decided to make Keyshawn Davis and Nahir Albright the rematch for the opener on DAZN, because there is so much backstory and the drama, the previews. They're gonna work this sucker up like crazy. For those who don't remember, Davis beat Albright by majority decision, not a wipeout, in Texas, and then promptly got popped for marijuana, which, despite it being widely accepted in most of the country, is still considered a prohibited substance in a lot of states by a lot of state commissions. So Texas put the hammer down, stripped him, took the win away, and so there's that. And it was in the next few months and fights where Keyshawn proceeded to psychologically sort of unravel, ends up, later getting teed up for a fight. Boy, I'm trying to recall who his original opponent was. This was the fight scheduled as his big celebratory homecoming main event in Norfolk, and he blows weight by 4 or 5 pounds. It's just, he didn't even try to make it, right? So on the undercard, Albright, his former foe, is scheduled to fight his brother and promptly, Kelvin Davis, and promptly beats the shit out of him. The Davis brothers, who were watching ringside, the other two, two of the three of the DB3, including Keon Davis, decide they are going to go have some words with Albright, and Keon Davis ends up busting into Albright's dressing room after his win, and they decide they're going to have a fist fight with him. Now, gentlemen, you should not be fighting unless you get paid, okay? You're professionals. Do not fight for free. Nevertheless, the Davis posse sets themselves on the Albright posse. It ends up out in the corridor where it's caught on video. And it was just the biggest hot mess imaginable. It was a horrible black eye for the Davis crew, for Top Rank, who's horribly embarrassed by this whole thing. Okay. Davis retreats a little bit to the background, gets his act together, comes back, wins himself a title, and bang, who do they decide to bring back after they've been without a TV contract for what is going to turn out in the end to be close to a year? Davis and Albright. Meanwhile, Albright, on the strength of his performance, got himself a fight with Frank Martin and fought him to a draw. I mean, it was a very messy, wild, competitive fight. That's a pretty impressive accomplishment for a guy who was keeping himself busy in boxing by fighting for Total Boxing League, which used to be called Total Combat League, TCL. Now it's TBL. That's the team format where a team of fighters each fight a single round. So Albright was keeping himself busy and paid, basically paid to train, doing these one-round fights in between, keeping himself busy and visible, which is what a lot of these guys that do the TBL fights do. In the meantime, he's a full-time nurse, and if you watched him after the Martin fight in the ring, as they were interviewing him before they closed out, he asked them, "Wait a minute, could I sing a little something?" and proceeds to break into song. I'm trying to recall what the song was, but he is a good singer. 2 weeks ago, he auditioned for and got through the first round of this upcoming season of America's Got Talent. So do we think there's a few storylines there? Oh yeah, there's more than a few storylines there. I just spent, 3.5, 4 minutes talking about him. Top Rank is going to, if you don't hear about all this stuff before the fight, they have not done their job.
It should happen. It should happen that way with DAZN. Like, one thing about DAZN, luckily, as much rightful flack that they get when it comes to subscription, subscription pricing and the whole pay-per-view aspect of it, they do a good enough job when it comes to building fight packages. And what better way than to have pretty much the package that we all boxing fans, we all know that this is top ranked video package that they play at every card.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. To have that with the zone production, it's gonna do great. And like I said, that fight is gonna be interesting. And we talked, I know when it came to the two other fights Mike mentioned, Oshaki Foster's that's gonna be a
That's a
very
terrific matchup.
well,
Truly, there are no better matchmakers in boxing than at Top Rank.
yeah, like because those two were circling each other immediately after, and they were able to get it done, and it's gonna be good. And for Abdullah Mason, Joe Cordina, interesting enough, remember the fight's gonna be in Cleveland, but
Oh, nice.
yeah, so it's gonna be
that's a great matchup. Cordina is an entertaining opponent, so it'll be a fun fight to watch. It's a nice payday for him. And, that's a little bit of the passing of the torch kind of fight. I like it.
Yeah, it is. Because one thing about Joe Cordina, like people like do watch Joe Cordina fights. Like he will fight his heart out, especially if he's fighting in Wales. Because obviously, like I said, that's his home area. But he is a fighter that will bring the fight to people, even if he knows he's not going to win. And that's going to be the case in this one because skill-wise, Abdullah Mason's probably going to dog walk him.
I think you're right.
Yeah, but he's going to give him a good enough. He's going to give him a really good enough fight, and I'm glad. Like I said, I'm glad for these two fighters, particularly Oshaki Foster and Abdullah Mason. They're getting good quality fights that let them show off their skill set and puts the spotlight on them at the right time they need it for their careers to get to the next level.
Michael, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Yeah, you're on mute, Mike.
Our host.
He may be having some tech issues at the moment. Oh.
Yeah. Well, let's carry on. I think we are down to preview time if we're going to preview. And we've already teased a little bit about what that next fight, that preview is going to be. Netflix is returning with yet another blockbuster card featuring, yet again, the heavyweights. It really is true that the health of boxing is directly tied to the health and fitness of the heavyweight division. And speaking of mysteries, we talked about Spence Jr. coming back after 3 years. Well, it hasn't been quite that long, but I believe this is the 6th unretirement for one Gypsy King, Tyson Fury, who has been off in Thailand training himself, so he claims. And we aren't quite sure what version of Fury is going to show up. He looks to be in good shape, if you believe social media. The other mystery question is, who's going to be in his corner? He claims he's been training himself. There's no corner named. Is he going to show up just having picked up some journeyman corner for a few $100 as he gets there? Which, by the way, happened in Temecula this past week, which it always is just crazy to me. So there's that. We have no idea whether he's still working with Sugar Hill Stewart or not, or is it going to be his father, or who the hell knows? Well, fortunately for Fury, he's coming back against, yes, an undefeated opponent in Montreal-based Arslanbek Makhmudov, who was with Eye of the Tiger, along with his stablemates Artur Beterbiev, part of kind of a Chechen invasion of Canada. Um, Undefeated, a lot of knockouts, sort of a big, lumbering dude. He's sort of like the original movie version of Frankenstein, right? Big, blocky, doesn't move all that fast. Punches, has a good record on paper. He passes the eye test. He's good at selling a fight. He calls himself the Lion. He's the scariest looking guy in boxing. Seriously, if you do not know him. Underneath, he seems to be a very nice guy, very congenial. But when he puts the game face on for the fight, it's exactly the central casting persona that's perfect for the Netflix audience who isn't going to know him, who's going to take one look and go, "Oh my God, look at that guy. That is one scary MF. Tyson Fury's getting in with him. What they don't know is how damn slow he is." And he's made to order for Tyson Fury. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, if I'm looking at the breakdown of this fight, that's the whole thing. This fight, it should be tailor-made for Tyson Fury to look at, which is why I said, like, he should do enough where he looks good enough that makes the AJ fight a lot more palatable than it already is for non-UK audiences. Having said that, though, hearing that Fury has been in Thailand of all places, and considering the history of the Gypsy King when it comes to substances per se, and gambling vices per se, I kind of worry of what type of person we're going to see coming out of this fight. Because, first of all, like you mentioned, Gail, we don't know who's training them. We don't know if it is his dad. We don't know if it is still Sugar Hill Stewart. We don't know if he wound up grabbing a guy from, like Sapali from Thailand. Maybe grab CP Freshmart's trainer,
Who probably comes up to his belt line. Maybe. It's going to be a tough. It's an intriguing fight because it's Tyson Fury, who is just, whatever you may think of him, is a force to be reckoned with, a powerful personality. We're going to get a little bit of a preview once we start seeing the pre-fight promotional events this week. The fighter arrivals, the first media workout, if there is one, the final pre-fight news conference, which will likely be Wednesday or Thursday. We will start reading the tea leaves because it's going to be our first look at Fury, since his second loss to Usyk. And, Makhmudov, if you've watched him fight, we know what he's about. Right?
Yeah,
he's big. He's big. He's tough. He will be hard to knock down. But we've seen Tyson Fury accomplish that. It all depends on which version shows up, which unretired version of Fury shows up. And this is a must-win for him in a lot of ways if he wants that big payday fight against Joshua. So this, in a lot of ways, will be Tyson Fury's last audition before people have to vote whether or not he gets into the Hall of Fame. I do think he's done enough to get there, but it is not the slam dunk, for example, that we've just had, a few years ago with Manny Pacquiao. And no fighter likes to leave that question unresolved with any doubts before it gets to the voters' hands 3 years from when he really does, in fact, firmly retire. The last person we had voted in prior to this year, Pacquiao promptly unretired after we voted him in. So, there is that. So he's
Yeah.
going to perform well. He can't just squeak by him.
No,
He's
shouldn't.
got to put on a show. Netflix wants the show. Say what you will about the Ngannou fight, which he absolutely did not take seriously. It was wildly entertaining, because Fury found himself on the end of a knockdown in a very dicey situation. Could that happen this time? I mean, I think it's possible if he didn't take it seriously, but I don't think he would have made the same mistake twice that he did against taking Ngannou lightly. This is a real boxer with a real pedigree, with Olympic medals, he is going to come prepared to the best of his ability. And heavyweights, one punch can change someone's future for good or for ill. So you could bet that Makhmudov has trained his ass off for this fight.
Yeah. That's the key part of it. Like, as long as we have a Fury of a sound mind, of sound body, he should be serviceable enough for him to come in, because I'm probably of the opinion where he squeaks by for the Hall of Fame.
I think he does too. I
Yeah,
agree.
because we have to remember, he did, granted, it was not in the most aesthetically pleasing fashion, but he did end the reign of Vladimir Klitschko.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
Much to everyone's surprise at the time.
Yep.
So
And
I agree with you.
yeah, so we had that. Obviously, you did have the Water trilogy, which was always up to the third fight was very still entertaining.
Yeah.
Like those two sold that fight fairly well. And there's always that one question. It's kind of like with Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas. If Jack Reese would have counted a little bit faster,
we wouldn't
have gotten
so
that
much
trilogy.
of boxing history turned on that count of Jack Reese.
Yeah.
A lot of other less experienced referees would have seen him flat on his back and not bothered to administer a count. I always want to see, other than a boxer in clear medical distress, I want to see them get the courtesy and the respect of a count. Count them out, because you do once in a while have something like happen to Fury.
Yeah.
Reese said he looked into his eyes and he saw Fury look right back at him, and he administered the count, and that man got up, and boxing history was very different. What intrigues me also about this is, while we're thinking and looking at the sort of obvious limitations of Arslanbek Makhmudov, his trainer is Mark Ramsey, Canada's finest trainer, without a doubt, and an exceptional trainer. I think a very underrated trainer. He has worked with a lot of these sort of slower, bigger offense-minded fighters. Look what he's been able to do with Beterbiev, with Christian Mbili, even with Eric Bazinian. He is getting the lion ready, and he has worked on his technical skills. He has, tried to urge him not to just simply rely on an early knockout, because, not everybody's going to go down when you hit them. And that's going to, in the heavyweight division, super heavyweights ruling right now. A guy's got to be prepared to go all 12. Who thought Wilder and Chisora were going to go all 12, right? So, I think that we're going to see, very interesting competition, and it's all going to revolve around what version of, Tyson Fury shows up, gets in the ring with Makhmudov. So let's go down and talk about who is on that undercard. It is quite the undercard that's teed up for this thing. The co-main event is some controversy in some corners. You have Conor Benn versus Regis Prograis at a 150-pound catch weight. What do you expect, Daniel?
This is an interesting aspect considering where these two are in their career. Obviously, Ben, like I said, just got off a very good, at least decent performance against defending the family, at least family name against Chris Eubanks Jr. But obviously, there's also been a lot of controversy with testing involving Mr. Ben. So a lot of the goodwill that he could probably gain in those fights, he has lost, and he's lost in a fairly quick fashion. And then he makes the move. Now, granted, this is only for one fight to go to Dana White, to go to Zuffa. And while I will admit the Zuffa cards have been entertaining when you watch them, they haven't been like the jolt that you think you would need, that Dana White would think would take over the boxing world. So luckily Ben is signing in for one contract, and the opponent is very, very interesting when it comes to Regis Prograis. We know when it comes to Rougarou, the best of his career sadly is already behind him. But he always does come prepared. He's not a guy that slacks off when it comes to training. He does show up, and he is varied because he's also done bare knuckle boxing too recently.
It's just nuts.
Yeah. So
at least he's not doing dirty boxing or misfits or some crazy thing like that. Or
yeah.
God forbid, power slap.
Well, to be fair, we all have to remember that Triller fight.
Yeah.
We all have to remember that Triller fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't against Ivan Redcatch, and the stretcher job wasn't the funny thing. It was just the fact that card was just pure insanity. I think Jim Lampley may still be high from that card.
And Al Bernstein for sure.
Yeah. Well, we know Al. He'll be do that on his own. I don't know about Jim.
Yeah. Well, he seemed to have recovered pretty quick. He got a good laugh out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, it seems that the obvious take on this is that Prograis is there to make Ben look good.
Yeah.
Anything different on your mind than that?
No, that's the main thing. Like, I don't know which version of Ben is going to come out of this.
Yeah.
Because out of the ones that you would say he become more prepared, Rougarou, to me, is the one that's always going to become more prepared. Like I said, and he's kept himself busy. He hasn't gotten into any major controversies.
But he's just washed, right? He's
just washed. Yes.
Yeah. Damn. I mean, it's kind of like, his old pal Joseph Diaz. Yeah. And they're just going to keep going. And I wish they wouldn't.
Yeah. And
you would like to remember them at their best, not now.
Yeah. And I love Jojo Diaz. That's the thing. I love Jojo Diaz. Like, he's been always like one of my like undercover like favorite fighters coming in, because he was able to pick himself up, fight fairly well. He was a champion. And he did help Tevin Farmer out when it came to that fight.
That's true.
So,
but, both these guys are fighting for, maybe different reasons than the fans want them to. So the other fights that are notable, though, I'm going to mention quickly, see if you have any thoughts. We've 2 heavyweight fights on the undercard worth noting. You have Jamie Tushkeva, who is much better known in Great Britain as Jamie TKV. Started as kind of a misfits influencer fighter and decided, I'm going to take this a little more seriously, and he's going to get an opportunity at it with a record of 9-2 to fight against Richard Riakporhe for the British heavyweight title. Go figure. That could be entertaining. That is a classic Netflix undercard fight. Also, though, we do, to me, have a very intriguing fight between Fraser Clark of Great Britain and Justice Hooney of Australia. That could be a spectacular flameout for one or the other. Both are coming off losses. Both need a win to stay relevant at heavyweight. So, honestly, other than Fury, maybe the biggest stakes for both of the fighters in any single fight on this card is going to be Clark and Hooney. Anything else look intriguing to you on this undercard?
Well, that's it. Clark and Hooney is a crash. It is a car crash. It is a car crash fight. And the main thing though about it is we know, like I said, we mentioned it. These are guys that are trying to come up on a new generation of heavyweights. Right, as like Fury is pretty much representing still the old guard. And
he is the senior generation exiting at the heavyweight division.
Yeah. So this, like I said, this undercard, like I said, shows a little bit. Like I said, it's more like I said on the UK side that you're starting to develop in that fight. Now, Teixeira, it's gonna be very interesting to see how he moves when it comes to this fight.
Well, for a guy who has very, very little background, very little experience, he doesn't completely suck.
Yeah,
maybe faint praise, but he's watchable. He absolutely is watchable out of that whole sort of misfits style, entry into boxing. God bless him. He got this far. Might be his last real fight, but he got this far.
Well, let's say he does have the British belt, and
he does.
We will admit that, if when it comes to undercard, when it comes to belts that you normally want to hold when you're moving up, and if you're going to be taken somewhat seriously, the British belt does hold a little bit more cachet compared to, let's say, like the NABO belt.
It is a belt that British fighters aspire to. It has a very rich history. They covet that belt. We think of it as just kind of this minor regional belt. That is a big deal. Yeah. Puts any UK fighter on the map.
Yeah, there's two things, folks, that you always got to remember when you pay attention to the European scene. Their countries' championships, a lot of the fighters will hold in high prestige, along with the EBU belts.
Yes,
because
European titles. So
because a lot of these guys know they're not going to be world beaters, and still getting that accolade does mean a lot when it comes to legacy in the fight. Like I said, we're not. If your top defense is going to be British or EBU, obviously you're not going to get a Casanata anytime soon. But at the same time, it does show that you have a serviceable career. And sometimes you never know. You never know that you may be a long-time EBU title holder, and you get that one shot, and you keep yourself busy. That's what happens there. So I'm not going to dismiss TKV off yet, unless he completely regresses. But this is a card for a spectacle. Netflix is showing us when it comes to this fight that they want performance and drama, and they may be able to provide it. Like I said, but I think the fight of the night and the entire card is probably going to be Benn versus Prograis. Because
I think from the dramatic aspect, absolutely, for as long as it goes, for sure.
Yeah, because there's this other factor, unfortunately, that Benn does that hurts him pretty much. He does look ahead when he doesn't need to. He's already eyeing Ryan Garcia.
He is, which would be an insane fight and probably take place in the UK, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, because that could be the main distraction that could give Rougarou a chance.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there with the basic information for those of you who don't already know. Fury versus Makhmudov on Netflix is on Saturday. It's going to come to us in the United States from Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, believe me, sold out, packed to the rafters, Tottenham Stadium in London. And it should start with the main cards action around 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. So, plan your lunch and your snacks accordingly. It is free to all Netflix subscribers. There's no additional pay-per-view for this one. If you are not a Netflix subscriber, folks, first of all, where you been? Second, you can sign up for a 30-day free trial when you're a new Netflix subscriber. So, what the heck? You got any other big plans on Saturday? And it will be available to watch on demand on replay for quite some time. So, you're going to watch. Y'all know you're going to watch. There are several other minor fight cards. Look them up. There's plenty of schedules out there. Enjoy it. And with that, before we close, Daniel, on behalf of Michael, who, must be bedeviled by technical issues, let folks who are listening know where they can engage with you further on social media.
All right, folks. Like I said, you see my socials right there, Rocks99. It is the same thing everywhere you go. Twitter, I will never call it X Elon. You can rot for that.
Well, remember, it's X/Twitter, which is pronounced shitter. So there's
Pretty
that.
much. There's some that, yeah. But
Twitter's
that
cool, but
blue sky, pretty much.
yeah.
Discord, IG, pretty much anywhere. Luckily, I have that handle going, and I do have, like I said, luckily, trying to diversify stuff a little bit when it comes to a group. Like I said, there's a group of people that I do talk a little bit of wrestling with. And like I said, shout out to Blitzball Champ Gaming, Jason Ingram. Shout out to Enigma V4. Enigma, who was on the chat a few episodes ago. I'm not surprised. And I'm very disappointed he did not show up, my friend.
Well, yeah, I know. You publicly called him out. So come on.
Yeah.
That time.
So, but good, like I said, to them, like Andy, like I said, Andy, Hendricks, Al, like those guys, like I said, they do like to talk wrestling, and particularly Al, he does do MMA too.
There
They
you
do
go.
talk a lot of MMA. Like we had an actual discussion about the Hickson Gracie Yoji Anjo incident that started, that pretty much set the table for Pride to start. But definitely said cash in there, but we talk anything, we talk wrestling, we talk NBA, we talk MLB, hockey, whatever you guys want to talk about. I can probably do it. I will say I have a sailor mouth because I am a sailor, and
Proudly so.
yep, and
You were taught by the best.
yes, and so, but then in that end, with that in mind, like I said, like the ladies hopefully get close at the show. Gail, where can we find you?
Well, you see my main home at nyfights.com. That is where my regular boxing coverage lies. Many of my fighter interviews are on my YouTube channel, which is Gail Falkenthal on Boxing. Yeah, I know, you gotta spell it. It's there on the screen. But once you find me, I'm the only Gail Falkenthal out there, so you can be assured of the authenticity. And the most recent interview happens to be with New Jersey-based Vito Milnicki Jr., who has the grave misfortune of being in the main event this weekend on Saturday as the same time as the Fury Makhmudov card, although probably is in the ring long after that card concludes out of England. So if you aren't completely worn out, you've got that fight card you can take a look at. It is being aired through ProBox, and it is taking place at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. So there's a little bit of fun history there if you want to check that out. Otherwise, we will call it a night, Daniel. And for those of you watching live, watching in delay, we hope you enjoy your week. and enjoy the fights of the upcoming weekend. We'll be back next week. Have a good evening.
Good evening, folks. Stay safe out there.